Okay, hello again, it's Klangrausch again. The last tutorial was about making an intro, and this time, as I said before, we will talk about the break in the arrangement, and therefore I will use the 3 tracks again that I showed you in the previous tutorial. So this time I will first show you the tracks and then we will talk about how to make a break. So here's the first track. We start here. And now comes the break. What has been done, the kick is away. And actually all things are away. Only the arpeggiator and the piano are still there. And now this is something like a bridge, you know. Now it's getting more funky. They add something new in the MIDI notes. And now it's building up until here where you have the drop. There will be added something else, a new element. And now comes this typical effect sound, which introduces the next part, the drop. Okay, so let me say this again. In this track, when the break comes, the first thing that happens is that the kick fades out. And in the club especially, most of the times you feel that a break comes or that a break is coming when the kick is away. This is actually just for building up to the real drop, which is here. And in this case it was quite minimalistic. You put out a lot of elements from the arrangement and only have one thing. In this case it was the piano, and I'm not quite sure if this was used in the section before. Yeah. Okay, so you see that only the piano stays for the break until it builds up. So let's see what is in the next track. Break track, okay, it's here. Let's have a listen. From here maybe. Okay. And now comes the break. As you can hear, the kick is away again. The most typical thing actually. And now some pads are fading away. Again, elements are reduced. And this is actually the second part of the break, where you introduce something new, which will also be used in the drop. Now you hear the transition sound, this effect sound, something like swoosh, you could say. We will talk about transitions later on, effect sounds and all this stuff. And you can hear the things that will be used in this main part were raised in the volume here. And now the last track. This is my track again. Where is the break of my track? Here. Okay, so let's start here. Now comes the break. Kick is away. I used an effect sound now again. And there is something that I already told you in the tutorial before. This plucky sound has been extended from a 1-bar loop to a 4-bar loop. Now I'm adding a kick again with a filter, which is a nice idea, I think, to introduce the next drop. Okay, now the filter gets down and the kick is there again. And again I used something like an effect sound to make the connection between the break and the drop better, more fluent. As you can see, these were 3 examples to show you how the breaks are produced in a normal way. So now we could talk about something, about some theoretical stuff. So breaks actually come after the intro. This is something that I already said in the tutorial before. And the breaks, how are they done? We now had 3 examples. Usually you have very many sounds in the part before the break comes, and then you actually try to minimize these sounds. For example, you have a pad, you have a bass, you have a kick, you have percussions, and you have a lead sound, and then all this will be reduced only to the pad and to the lead sound. So it's quite coherent that you still have the connection between these 2 parts. And when then, after 1/2 of the break, you then try to build up the sound, to build up the arrangement until the drop comes, to make it more, to create more tension, to make it more interesting. And of course, if you're in a club, to feel that it will start. Nothing is worse as when you have a break and you actually don't can anticipate when the drop comes. That's why we need to have transitions and these build-ups and all this stuff. Is there anything else to say? Well, the build-up is actually not as complicated in my opinion as the intro. You have to experiment a little bit. Again, the golden rule in my opinion is you have to put away some tracks, for example the bass and the kick, and then when the build-up comes in the second half, you fade, for example, the kick in, or you introduce some percussions that will be used in the main part. And quite similar to the intro, you can fade in with different methods. For example, what I do quite often is a filter sweep. This is very popular. I can play this again for you. Let's start here. As you can hear, the main sound now is sweeping. And then I'm adding a bass, which will also be used in the main part now. Yeah, that's actually it. Well, in my opinion, there is nothing more to say to this stuff, but as I said, we are now talking a little bit about the transitions, about effect sounds and all this stuff. You always have to make a smooth connection between the intro and the break, between the different arrangement parts. And this quite often will be done by adding transitions with effect sounds. And for example, I can show you some of these specific sounds from my Essential House pack. So let's see, here it is, effects. Well, in most of the cases in the sample library it's called effects. And there you often have swoosh sounds. Not this, wait. Something like this. This sample, for example, you could use when the drop comes in. Not as a build-up, but as something like an introduction of the like an introduction of the drop. Quite often it's something like swoosh sounds. Let's see. For example, this. This is quite popular for a build-up. So now you see these transition or these effect sounds are very important to introduce the drop. And then you can experiment. For example, you could put a sidechain on it to make it more interesting. Let's say you have a wind sound, a whoosh sound. Then you could sidechain it with a kick. And it's actually possible with a lot of different sounds. You can also use sounds that build up that are quite weird in your opinion. that you would think, well, I wouldn't use this actually as an effect sound, but this can also produce some quite interesting effects. Well, we talked about the break. How do we build up a break? We minimize things. We, for example, put the kick away. And we talked about the transitions with effect sounds, which are used to introduce the real part. So, in my opinion, this is actually it about the break. In the next part we will talk about the hook or the drop or the main part. You could say it, you could call it as you want. And for now, that's it. I hope that you stay tuned for the next episode, which will come maybe in 1 week or something. Thank you very much for listening and watching. Bye bye.